And hello everyone, welcome back to another Flask tutorial. So in the previous tutorial we talked about routing, so if you missed that I highly recommend you go and watch that tutorial. In this tutorial we'll be talking about templates. Now if you've ever worked with Go, then you'll know about templating languages. If you've ever worked with PHP, you'll know about it. Of course, if you haven't, then it's perfectly fine, even if this is your very first time. So usually, and let me actually just go to our root page here. There we go. Usually you don't want to render HTML like this. And usually people will just say you usually don't want to do this, but I want to give you a real world example of why doing this is horrible. So this is done in Nimlang. So it's not Python, but it's very similar to Python. Now here we have some HTML, and this HTML gets put into our website at the end of the day. And it generates, and that gets used with a bunch of other HTML templates that we're using here. As you can see, everywhere we do this is where we put HTML in. And in here in our root, where we have our root route, it actually doesn't show the route here, but where we have our root route, we generate the HTML page, and it takes a chunk of things here, a chunk of lines. Same here. Most of the lines is used by HTML. Even here, where we do a for loop, to make HTML. And this is why I don't want to do this, because then you already have a bunch of code in one file, but if you add HTML to that, then you want to format that HTML and everything, it just becomes worse. And managing this HTML over time becomes so difficult, you're just going to frustrate yourself. And even I, at this point, was just like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to use a templating language. And that is why you don't want to use HTML in here. And that's just one example. There's a bunch of reasons why you don't want to do this. So people came up with using templates. Now, Flask has a very special set of rules for how its file structure should look. So you have to create a folder called templates. Not templates2 or my folder. This has to be called templates. That is where your templates files is held in Flask. Then in here you can create your HTML file. So hello.html or index.html or goodbye.html, whatever you want to call this file, you can call it. I'm just going to say index. And then you can put some code in here. And here I just have a snippet. But basically, here we have just a normal HTML. If you've never worked with HTML, I do recommend my HTML course. Just a few lessons will be perfect for you. And then here we have our body. And in the body is where we put things, and I just forgot to say /HTML. There we go. Cool. And as this comment says here, we pass in variables like this. Now, this is already way cleaner than what we had, because with what we did there in that example I showed you, we would have had to put this inside of the code. And whilst there's nothing wrong with it, it would have been a massive pain in the butt. We can still do this. We can go here and turn this into an F string. We make this documentation string, and you can put this in here. This works perfectly fine, but yet again, it looks disgusting. So we'd rather not. We'd rather create our own file with that holds our HTML. And we'll be using this a lot, so don't worry if you're not yet comfortable with using this, because we'll be drilling this into our heads. Especially once we work on a project that uses this. So just copy and paste this code to your own HTML file inside of the templates folder. Needs to be called templates. Remember that. Cool. Once you have done that, we can go to app.py. And I'm going to create another route that's going to just contain a string with the user's name. And we can say name, and by default it will be Steve. So you can still give it a default value if you want. Cool. Then here we can now import from Flask render template, and this will render a template for us. We can just put render template here, give the template name, in this case index.html. So whatever this file here is, or whatever you call that file. And then the variables you want to pass in this case name, because here we have a name and it's enclosed in these brackets here. We'll get back to this. And then name is of course equal to the name we passed in, name. So if you called this something else, for example X, then now it should be called X here. Okay. Now when we go here, we refresh, and my bad, hello world should now be something else. Let's just call this person. That should work. Now we refresh, we get hello world. If we go to /Mike, then we get your name is Mike and hello world, because that is what we put here. If we go to /Jake, then it will say your name is Jake. /Jack, then it will say your name is Jack. So that is what this allows us to do. So now we're rendering HTML using this render template. So instead of having to put HTML inside of our code, we create a templates folder to hold the HTML for us. So now we can just say whatever we want here. So if we rename this to, instead of saying name, we say username. Then if we refresh, it's not going to work, because now we have to say username is equal to name. So refresh, now it's Jack. So anything inside of these double brackets is a variable. So then you can pass any variable into this render template, and it's any amount you want. For example, we can say age is equal to 10, for example. Now if we go here, we can say ... age, and then age, like that. Cool. Now if we refresh, it will also give the age. So you can pass any amount of variables in here as you want, and it will be usable on this page here. And that's the power of using templates. Now one more thing, you'll notice I gave this a default value, but you might be wondering, how does that work? How can you even use a default value when you have to pass in a value to get here? Well, we can actually make two routes go to the same place. So now route / and route / and then something inside of it goes to this place here. So both of these render this same function here. If I were to now refresh, it will still work. And if I were to remove that and just go to root, then it will say your name is Steve as a default value. So Steve, default value. So if I don't pass it in now, it will say Steve. So using this method, you can make 2, 3, 4, 5, how many routes you want, go to the same location. And yeah, that's the basics of templates and using multiple routes with one function. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all again in the next Flask tutorial.